Hey guys, it's Jackson Buhai here, your host of In the Know with TMZ. There has been a lot of disinformation floating around the internet, particularly in regards to the case of Nolan Wells. Now, we have taken a deep dive into the independent autopsy. The results from the state autopsy have yet to be fully released, but I thought it would be pertinent to bring on an experienced pathologist, Dr. Keisha Davis, to talk to us about this autopsy today. Dr. Davis, thank you so much for joining me.
You are so welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Of course, glad to have you. So, look, I want to start off. People are saying that Nolan Wells unfortunately drowned by accident. People are saying that Nolan Wells may have been murdered by the people he was around at the time on Horn Island. People are saying it could have been an accident to where he drank too much and fell into the water, got swept away by a current. There are so many theories floating around. In your experience, what percentage of drowning-related deaths end up undetermined, and what usually tips the case one way or another?
Well, I want to preface everything by saying I am an APCP pathologist. That's anatomic and clinical pathologist. So I do autopsies. I had to do that as part of my training, right? Forensic pathology is very specific. So after they do their residency, they do additional year or years to become a forensic pathologist. So they are the creme de la creme, and they can answer these questions better than others can. Judy Melanik is one, Dr. Judy Melanik, who's on social media explaining a lot of this stuff. But I will tell you the main issue, first of all, that you talked about is that people are saying. That's the thing people are saying. And people can say anything, but at the end of the day, it's the facts or the lack thereof that allow us to come with a case. And as much as a pathologist would love to have everything black or white, and you know the causes, whether the manner is undetermined, whether the manner is suicide, homicide, natural, it all depends on what they have with the case, right? If you see somebody drown in front of you, it's clear what happened. The person drowned. The problem is when you recover somebody from water, the question is how many of those that we see a body in water, are those due to, right, drowning, and can we say that, or is it undetermined? There was a Finnish study, and that study unfortunately said that about 16% of those bodies found in water were undetermined, where we couldn't say they drowned in the water or they were unalive before they were put in the water, right? That's the problem. And it's the same thing in this case. We don't have the stories to say the person truly drowned. We weren't there. We can't speak to Nolan Wells, and the other individuals are not necessarily speaking. So that's where the problem goes to the autopsy. And we want the autopsy to say, is there water in the lungs? Is this definitely a drowning? Well, the body was recovered not directly after, right? It's a couple of days. And so therefore you're dealing with decomp. And then the first autopsy is sealed. So what do? You have the second autopsy who got the lungs that are cut up. So the water in the lungs, you can't necessarily see that when the lungs have been dissected through, which is the normal procedure anyway. So being undetermined, yeah, it can happen. It definitely can happen in it. And that's where I think people don't understand we're a chapter in the story. And a lot of the story is going to come from testimony to find out the truth.
You bring up the dissection of the
Yeah.
lungs, and also that the lungs aren't the only part of the body that were removed or altered during the first autopsy. But when you talk about the state autopsy doing that to Nolan Wells' body, dissecting and removing the organs, how much does that limit the second independent autopsy from drawing accurate results?
That's a great question. And Dr. Judy Melanik had said this in a post that the second autopsy literally is hindered. It's like blindfolding yourself, and now you got to figure out to go through a maze. You probably saw it in a flash. You got 10 seconds to see it. Now you got to figure it out. That's what the second autopsy is, literally. The first autopsy, they have every right, because this is their jurisdiction, to do the best that they can, right? Dissect the organs. So when we do dissection, I want to step back just a second. We do a dissection, right? We have to take all the organs out and look at them in block. So for instance, if there was something in the larynx or in the throat, when they are cutting through to look through everything, that's going to be dislodged, right? If they're concerned about someone getting strangulated, that's taken out as a block, and that's why the second autopsy didn't have it. So he has to wait for the first autopsy. But things that you see on first initial examination, when you're cutting up the organs, because we have to, we slice them, what we call bread loafing. We slice the organs thinly to look for things. Maybe there was something lodged in there. Maybe there was there's changes like of drowning. Maybe there was actually break of the hyoid bone, which can be seen with strangulation. But the second forensic pathologist has to wait to get all that. So it's very hard and it's challenging. However, I will say this. The second autopsy is the same as getting a second opinion or us having a second pathologist look at our cases. It's important and vital because sometimes things do get overturned based on that second autopsy.
This I want to ask you about this discoloration to the back
Yeah.
of his neck. Is it common for decomposition to mimic bruising to that degree?
So decomposition can do a lot of things based on the stage. We're talking about this the stage, the time, right? The temperature, the water, the conditions that the body was in. Was the body moved? So this is what he said. And people are equating a bruise, an actual bruise contusion that happens while you're living, right, to what he said was red discoloration, right? So you have a sign, you have something you see, and now what could be the cause of that sign could be multiple things. We do it in medicine all the time. We have a finding, now what caused that finding? And multiple things can lead to the same thing. It's a redness in the back of the head. Yes, it was a nice size amount. He put the size on there. However, he said two things. If you look on top of the skin, there was no breakage of the skin, which would have been another clue to help us say, oh, yes, somebody must have hit him. There's a laceration. Then underneath that red discoloration, the bone was not broken. There was no fractures. He had even looked additionally in other parts of the body where the overlying skin didn't show anything of concern just to make sure he didn't see any fractures. That doesn't mean anything did not happen to this individual. It means that the red discoloration, we cannot necessarily say it was a contusion due to someone hitting him or was post-mortem. That's unfortunately the gray zone that sometimes happens in pathology.
Is there, in pathology, any forensic method? I know you said that you're not a forensic pathologist, but
Yeah.
I'm asking to ask. Is there any method that can help establish whether or not Nolan Wells was unconscious before or after entering the water?
What they see in the lungs, it can. Now, this is the problem sometimes where pathologists in general or forensics can disagree, right? Based on the same findings, are you saying textbook that this is that the person was alive, there's fluid in the lungs, right? So if you unalive before and then you're put in the water, technically the same changes you see with a drowning you won't see, like changes of fluid in the actual alveolar spaces, maybe some frothy fluid in the upper airways or stuff like that. But the first autopsy has that information. So there is a possibility you can tell the difference between the two. The problem is that nothing's 100%. So let's say 90% of the people, you will see these changes of the person unalived in the water, meaning it was a drowning. But what if there is a chance that you see these findings and they're not totally clear, but the person actually unalived before? So you see, it's a gray zone. So you have to take multiple clues to get together, get to the answer. Not one clue by itself, but multiple. The more clues you have that suggest it, then we can say it's compatible with or consistent with the person drowning. Now, here's something that I just say. Someone can drown. This is why you need a story, right? Someone can drown in the water. That doesn't mean that somebody contributed to it. Somebody can drown, and without the stories, what if people were watching him drown? That's still a crime. What if somebody may have pushed down with the head? What are we going to see in the autopsy? Nothing. So that's why the autopsy is as good as the story that comes with it.
Doctor, we spoke briefly before this interview started, and you expressed your discontent that there was a lot of misinformation and a lot of guessing going around regarding this case. Before we wrap up, is there a message that you have to the general public, people on the internet, people following this case that you would like to express yourself?
Here's two. I'm a mother, by the way. I am a mother of a young adult male, and I completely am with the family. At the end of the day, there could be some wrongdoing or not wrongdoing, but every time we speculate and add on to the story, imagine the pain that a family member is going through. That's what we think about. We want to be sleuths. I understand it. We are angry. I understand it. But the more you speculate, the more pain you are adding. So think about that before you speculate. In addition to that, if you are trying to do a deep dive, get an expert like TMZ is doing. Get somebody that can tell you the process, because sometimes most of the disinformation or misinformation is because people don't understand the basics of science. And I don't expect you to. Most doctors don't go into the autopsy room and understand what we do, right? The neck being missing was a big thing that people were running with, wasting time to find out. That's standard procedure. If there's an organ that you want to further evaluate, it's withheld. And the second independent autopsy is being requested. It's important. And there's one more message that I wasn't able to share before, is that the second autopsy can be done and people can't pay for it. Colin Kaepernick's name has been thrown around, but he actually is a co-founder of the Autopsy Initiative. I found about it. I have actually spoken with them. They've been on my podcast, the Medical Collective podcast, before. It's the Autopsy Initiative. He pays, and the organization pays for independent autopsies for families, ICE-related, police-related unalivements, suspicious unalivements. They pay for those and they do those. And some cases have been overturned because of that. So if you guys want the information that are out there, look into the Autopsy Initiative. If you want to do something, support something that is doing the work by professionals.
Doctor, you're absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today.
You are so welcome. Take care.